welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, then my name is Katie. I'm a full-time artist and I create in my sketchbook every single day. So I thought I would share a video all about keeping a sketchbook. I've had a couple of messages recently asking about how, because they are struggling with it. So I want to share 5 tips and just talk about my own practice and why I find it really helpful for me as an artist. If you follow me on Instagram and have seen some of my previous YouTube videos, you'll know that I am doing a daily art challenge and I'm regularly working in my sketchbook. I'm also doing a 100-day challenge at the moment all about sketchbook play. So I'm really focused on using my sketchbooks, but I never actually used to be that way. So we're going to start there and talk about how I use my sketchbook and how it's changed over the years. So I've always sort of seen myself as an artist. I did graphic design at university and went into a career of graphic design, but I always did illustration and art on the side as like a hobby, and then I opened my Etsy shop and I started selling my art on there. Something I did at the weekends and in the evenings. And I always had a sketchbook, but I never really reached for it very often. So this is a really good example. This is a sketchbook that I started in 2018. So this is actually a Moleskine sketchbook. You can see some of my sketchbooks over there on the coloured pile. And if you want to see through those and see some of my artwork, then I will link up here the playlist of my sketchbook tours. But this sketchbook is very, very different to those. And actually, when I look through it, I didn't finish this until 2021. So it actually took me 3 years to fill this one. Whereas now, obviously, where I'm working every day in my sketchbooks, it takes a lot less time. But back then, I only reached for this when I had an idea or a doodle, and actually there's bits in here that are like lots of sketches and like thumbnails. I also did a lot of like typography experiments in here, and I will talk a little bit about an idea on using it in this way coming up. But I did want to share that I haven't always kept a sketchbook to like the same standard as I do now. And my main point here is that it's okay if you don't use your sketchbook every day. I know it's really easy on social media to compare, and like we obviously have ideals in our head and sometimes we have things that make us an artist, and perhaps keeping a sketchbook is one of those. But I do just want to emphasize that you're still an artist if you don't keep a sketchbook. I know it can be really easy to compare when we see people filling their sketchbooks, and obviously I'm guilty of this too. I'm constantly sharing very finished work in my sketchbook, and most of my practice is done in the sketchbook. But if you're an artist that doesn't think about using a sketchbook and can just go straight into a final piece, or perhaps prefers doing it on papers instead of in one place, then that's totally fine too, and I don't think that should invalidate you as an artist. I'm just wanting to share some tips for people who have asked, who perhaps feel like they want to try a sketchbook and are feeling a little bit frustrated about how to fill it. So I do hope that this video is helpful, but I did just want to share that it's totally okay as an artist to not keep one. So my first tip for keeping a sketchbook is to do it similar to this one. If you're not used to having a sketchbook and going into it all the time, then I would suggest using it as like a catch-all, almost like a notebook where you can doodle things, you can like sketch whilst you're on the phone, tape in random bits of paper. That's what I did here. I even taped in like bits of my palette because I liked the colours there. But I did use this as like a notebook, so when I did do little pieces, I taped it in with washi tape. And so where I didn't reach for this very much, I really did just tape my doodles in. I didn't reach for my sketchbook initially, so I would just use scraps of paper I found on my desk. But it was really easy to stick it in here and collate it all in one place. Instead of having random bits all over the desk or even just throwing them away, it made sense for me to stick them all in here, and then like they're really safe in here and I can come back and still see those little sketches from like my early art career. So I found that really helpful. Obviously I did reach for this for smaller pieces, and this is a very different sketchbook to what I keep now, but it was still very playful and experimental. There's a lot more unfinished work. I did do some like finished paintings in here. There's one that I really like, which is this one. But generally this sketchbook was a place for lots of things. Some swatches, some little typography experiments. And so having your sketchbook as like a catch-all place so you don't feel scared about writing in it, You can just put whatever you want in there. It definitely helps to ease that sort of first thought of using a sketchbook, because I know it can be really daunting, even as an artist who uses one regularly. When I start a new sketchbook, the fear of the blank page is real, and I do get a little bit nervous when I am filling it, because although it can be a really safe place, it's not like a really expensive piece of paper that you have to do a perfect painting on. You can still get that sort of uncertainty when you're creating, and so I totally understand that, but using it in this way could be a nice way to ease yourself in. And at the end of this, I was using it a little bit more and more. I was still doodling things in here, but it definitely helped me use it and reach for it a little bit more. And I still really love this sketchbook because it really shows like my progression. And from this, I then did move into a Royal Talon sketchbook, and before I started my daily art challenge, I was reaching for that every now and then. So I wasn't doing daily art back then. Obviously, I had less time because I am now a full-time artist, so this is my job. So that's another thing, is to like manage your expectations. You don't have to create every day. If, you know, life can get busy, but if you just reach for it when you fancy it, then that's totally fine. And it's okay to take like 3 years to fill your sketchbook. It's only recently I've started filling them quicker, but it definitely took me a long time to fill this one. And so my next point is to keep the pressure low. Like I mentioned, it's really easy, especially with social media, to compare ourselves with other artists. And I know that I certainly do compare myself when I see some things on Instagram, and I wish I could create even more than I do. I wish that I wasn't just sort of a one and done sort of person in my sketchbook and just doing one page and then calling it done. I wish I could tap into that inspiration and fill multiple pages all of the time. But I'm sort of having to learn that that's not really my art style, and perhaps that's something I'll get to, but right now I'm happy with just doing the one piece. But similarly, if you're not a person who creates every single day, then that's also fine. Like I said, it can take you years to fill a sketchbook, and it's kind of just with art in general of releasing those pressures we have on ourselves. It's something I talked about in my daily art challenge video, which I will link up here, but we'll come onto that again in a minute with a later point. But it's definitely hard because we do have pressures on ourselves as artists, and so I think sketchbooks should be really low pressure. I know that it can be scary, like I said, but really lean into why you want to keep a sketchbook. Is it to explore your work? Is it to just do sketches? Is it just to write little notes and doodles? Having an idea on what you want to use it for definitely helps, but keeping it really low pressure is really important. There are artists who fill their sketchbooks with really finished pieces, like you'll have seen mine, how mine is filled with finished artworks each day. But like you saw, it didn't start off like that, and actually I have a low pressure sketchbook that I don't share online. I only share that with my patrons, and I do sketchbook tours of that one over there, because that's like my sort of even safer space. That's where I can do rubbish little drawings and not worry. I can do my life drawing in there. I can do things that are just experiments and don't have to be as finished for the ones that I do show on Instagram. So there are artists that you can see online that have beautiful sketchbooks, really highly finished and highly detailed paintings in their sketchbooks, but I guarantee you that they will have a separate sketchbook for like their doodles or their little thumbnail sketches and all the very unfinished pieces that they don't share online. So it's important to remember that there are other things going on behind the scenes, and they have this very finished sketchbook as like almost their portfolio of their work, but I'm almost certain that they will have another one just for like little sketches and doodles. So again, releasing that pressure of feeling like mine has to be as good as theirs, because it doesn't, and they're probably not showing you everything. So my next tip is to focus on play and experimenting. So I am on a 100-day challenge at the moment, which is called 100 Days of Sketchbook Play. And I did that because I really wanted to experiment more. And like I suggested, having that idea of what you want to use your sketchbook for can really help. So for me, I'm leaning into play and experimenting, and that means you can fill your spreads with just material swatches. You can try some new mediums and really just play with the texture. You can grab a brush and a bottle of ink and play with all the million ways that you can make marks, and use your sketchbook as a playful sort of jumping point onto more art. It doesn't have to be final things, like I keep saying, but I do think it's really important. I know that a lot of these points overlap, but I think leaning into the play and having fun is the main thing when you're keeping a sketchbook. Releasing the pressure, releasing those expectations you have on yourself, and just tapping into that childlike play. That's something I've been really thinking about lately, of like going back to when we were little and we didn't think about what the world expected of us, and we could just grab some felt tip pens and draw the sky and just do a line at the top and this big fat sun. And that's not the way the world works, but it's the way we saw the world. And so I really want to tap into that childlike energy of doing it the way that we want to and not worrying about it. And I think that's the energy I want in my sketchbooks, and something I want to share with you, because I think having that sort of joyful, fun time in your sketchbook will make you want to reach for it more often and fill the pages a little bit more easily. So my next point is the one that actually changed the way that I work in sketchbooks and helped me to fill mine a little bit quicker, which is to set your own challenges. So I've mentioned it a few times, I have done a year-long daily art challenge before, and I'm currently on my 100-day daily art challenge. I'm going to link that video again because I do think it's really important to watch if you are setting challenges about managing expectations and how to keep it under control. But you don't have to do such a big challenge. It could be something as simple as taking it with you one day and just drawing constantly. You could do like one of those hour by hour challenges, like the daily comic day, where you take 5 minutes and doodle something in your sketchbook on the hour every hour on that day. Or you can set mini challenges like you're going out for a day trip, you take your sketchbook with you and try and doodle as much as you can. Or you could go to a museum, take your sketchbook with you, and just do mini challenges like that. But I found that doing the daily art challenge has made me go to my sketchbook every single day and fill it. And that's the only way I changed my sketchbook practice, was to purposefully decide how I want to keep my sketchbook. I wanted to fill it more, I wanted to push myself and grow as an artist, and the way for me to do that was to create more regularly. So doing the daily art challenge has definitely helped with that, and that's why my sketchbook changed from this one to like these ones that I've shown in my sketchbook tours, because I purposefully went into my sketchbook every day to create. So if you find that difficult with like motivation and not wanting to create for such a long time, or it just doesn't work with your life and schedule, the next one is an idea of challenges that you find elsewhere. So on Instagram, there are always Instagram challenges. I share these in my monthly email if on Patreon, but I pick out a couple of challenges. You can find them on Instagram, shared by other artists. They're usually hosted by a few of them, and they'll give you prompts and ideas for each day. Sometimes they're a daily thing, sometimes they're a weekly thing, but they're a really good place to look at if you're stuck for ideas on filling sketchbooks. And you can pick and choose if you want to do all of them. I think these challenges are really low risk and low pressure, so I think that's a good place to start. And then the other one is to join in with some Patreon challenges. So a lot of the Patreons that I follow for other artists have their own live streams, and you can draw along with them. And I'd be remiss to not include my own Patreon here, because I also run live streams over my Patreon where we do drawing sessions and draw together. But I find these have been so helpful, especially when I'm not feeling inspired and I don't want to draw. Being told exactly what to draw and for how long is so helpful with that, and it really helps get me out of my creative funk. We all know what it's like. We want to find the perfect reference image before we can start drawing. We can spend longer than the actual art finding the thing that we want to draw before we actually create it. And so I find that the Patreon live stream is really helpful with that. Generally, they will bring the references, they will tell you how long to draw, and you can just do it. And just being told what to do is such a weight off. So you can fill your sketchbooks just with challenge pieces and live stream replays. And I find that's a really nice way to fill it without having to use your brain as much, because you're being told what to do. And they're so varied. You can join lots of different artist ones, or you can stick to like the free Instagram challenges. And just being told some ideas on what to draw can really help unlock that thing in our head to grab our sketchbooks. If you have your own ideas and tips for keeping your own sketchbook that I haven't mentioned, please do pop them down in the comments. I think it would be really helpful to get some other opinions, and if somebody is clicking on this video wanting some ideas to fill their sketchbook and maybe isn't keeping it up as often as they'd like, they can check in the comments for even more ideas and we can make it more of a community sharing thing. So I absolutely love working in my sketchbook. It's absolutely my go-to now when I am creating, and it feels like a very natural daily habit for me and helps to keep me creative, and I love to fill it with a wide amount of subjects, and I think that really helps push me as an artist. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then please do like and subscribe. I am trying to grow my YouTube channel this year and that really helps. I will see you next Sunday with a new YouTube video. I hope you have a lovely week and I'll see you then. See you later.